This is a video about virtual reality generators and beauty. Somehow there's a connection there, and I just want to talk a little bit about it, explore it. This is going to be a very casual video. I don't have any script. I don't really even have a plan. I haven't formed these thoughts properly in my own mind, but they are beginning to form, and I kind of want to just have more videos that are more casual, because recently I've been doing a lot more structured videos with scripts. So I just want to do something without a script. So I want to essentially make the case for a new way of appreciating beauty, which of course means a new way of appreciating art. And it has something to do with understanding all of the possible works of art that beauty can exist in. To appreciate beauty is to understand all of the works of art that it can exist in, and also understand the types of minds that it can exist in. That's going to be the punchline, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Let's start with understanding what the heck is virtual reality at all, and how is it related to beauty. We're going to go through understanding how it's related to knowledge first. And like I said, this is going to be casual. I'm making water. So you normally see, if you see my videos, I make a lot of tea, like I drink tea during my videos. In order to have really nice tea, I actually I design water specifically for tea. So it's like a curated spring water. So I'm adding minerals to distilled water. It's not actually distilled, but I'm adding minerals to water that has no minerals in it, in order to make a specialized water for me to drink, just so you know what I'm doing. So virtual reality is going to be distinguished from image generation. That's going to be the main mechanism of me explaining what virtual reality is. And by the way, I'm getting all of this from this book, The Fabric of Reality by David Deutsch. Chapter 5 is on virtual reality. And I don't know if in that chapter he makes the connection, but somehow in this book he starts making the connection. Virtual reality, knowledge is a form of virtual reality rendering. And I'm making the further connection that beauty is a form of virtual reality rendering. Anyway, virtual reality is distinguished from image generation, where image generation, you make a particular singular image, and it doesn't have to be a image like visual. This is any sensory, information, but a singular, specific, specified sensory display. And virtual reality is something similar to that. It involves an image generation, but it interacts with a person. You have user input. So the images are generated based on the user input. And your virtual reality is always going to be never certifiable. Something like a distinguishing factor between image generation and virtual reality. For image generation, you can very much easily certify that this image is actually accurate, properly done, finished, understood, got it. For virtual reality, you are not able to do that, because the range of possibilities in the virtual reality environment are greater than you could even ever attempt to do, because it involves the rendering of so many different types of images based on all possible different human interaction, or user input rather. Okay, so that's the basic idea of what a virtual reality is. And it comes along with all the other basic connotations that you can think about. You have an interactive environment. Virtual reality generator renders an environment, and that environment can be interacted with by user input. And then the environment will change. The image of the environment will change. If you were to have a virtual reality environment of like a particular place, like a room, like I'm in a room right now. If you have a virtual reality environment of this room, it means that every possible thing I can do in this room, in my actual room, would be able to happen in the virtual reality, and the environment would respond exactly in the way that it will respond here. And it has to account for every single possible thing that I could do, including changes that allow for new possibilities for me to do more things that I haven't thought about before making the virtual reality generator. Does that make any sense? Maybe it does. Okay, so to make the connection to knowledge, I'll just kind of state it plainly. Knowledge is a virtual reality rendering of all of the environments that knowledge can exist in, specifically, it can survive in, and it can replicate in. And there's a little bit more of a nuance there. It's the difference between it can replicate and it can survive. And the actual thing is that it causes itself to survive or it causes itself to replicate. That is an important distinction, but I won't get too into detail about it today, right now. So to put it into like the kind of most basic terms, it'd be like imagine a strand of DNA or something like that. Imagine a strand of DNA. It embodies some knowledge and it allows an animal or a being to do certain things or whatever. And the idea that David Deutsch has is that the DNA is embodying knowledge, and that knowledge is of the environment. It is a rendering of the environment. And if it has an accurate rendering of the environment, then it will survive in that environment. If it has an inaccurate rendering of that environment, it will not survive in that environment, right? So it renders the environments that it can survive in. And imagine it in another way, like scientific knowledge. If you have scientific knowledge, it is embodied in a particular equation. So let's say special relativity or general relativity. There's a bunch of equations that describe general relativity. And those equations embody some knowledge. And that knowledge is knowledge of certain environments which those equations, the knowledge in those equations can exist in, or can survive in, or can cause itself to survive, however we want to put that. And then you can imagine that it also means that anything in our environment, like our regular old reality, all of our objects also embody the knowledge of general relativity. So the equations are describing the objects or the motion of the physical objects. So the knowledge in the equations describe the reality that we live in, because it can cause itself to survive because it is also embodying the same knowledge that is embodied in the environment. It's embodying the environment. I think I'm describing that well enough-ish. Well-ish enough. And so it is with any knowledge that we have. It is embodying a virtual reality rendering of the environment that it can exist in. If the knowledge were worse or different, it would still embody an environment, and it might be similar to the environment that we live in. But there will just be differences. You'll notice that your equations and the knowledge embodied in your equations will start to describe a different environment than our reality. So the virtual reality rendering of the knowledge embodied in the equations will look different than than their actual reality that is actually here. The rendering will be different from our reality. Okay, and then that means that to understand the equations of general relativity or science of any sort, quantum mechanics, all these things, to understand them is not just to understand the equations, it's to understand the environment that is being rendered by those equations. It means to understand reality. You're understanding all of the environments in which that knowledge can be embodied. All the environments which that knowledge can be surviving or can exist. To understand science is to understand our reality. Okay, I am proposing that this is the same for beauty. beauty is a form of knowledge, and it embodies this knowledge of the environments that it can survive in and replicate in. And then also, I guess, I generally always say replicate. I at one point will want to generalize to say that it could be other transformations, because it doesn't have to only be replication. Just replication is just one special form of transformation that is generally super helpful or super necessary, but it's not the only type of transformation that's possible. Anyway, not super relevant for what we're talking about today. I would just say that beauty can survive in certain environments. And there are two types of environments. There are works of art and there are minds. So in order to appreciate beauty, you'd have to understand the environments in which it can survive. So that means understanding the types of works of art that it can survive in, and understanding the types of minds that it can survive in, the types of minds that can notice it and appreciate it, essentially. So those are the two things. So we have, of course, my channel, I'm very interested in new ways to appreciate art, or just finding ways to appreciate art. We have general conception of appreciating art, which is just enjoying something. You experience a work of art and you enjoy it. Okay, that's great. I propose a different version of this, which is not appreciating an entire work of art, but it's appreciating the beauty within the work of art, which I'm calling knowledge within the work of art. And you want that knowledge to replicate into your mind, and then it might cause some psychological transformations or anything of that nature. And that would be appreciating the work of art, if the beauty is replicated into your mind and causes transformations. Okay, so that's a new version, but then I'm now in this video proposing a even more specialized version, which is specifically understanding the types of minds and the types of works of art that the beauty can replicate into. So in the most basic sense, I might appreciate some music. I really like Brahms's Piano Trio No. 2. The scherzo just goes hard. Okay, I like it. That's one form of appreciating. And then the next form is I specifically appreciate the form. I'm not appreciating the entire work of art. I'm appreciating the beauty within it. I'm appreciating some of there's like a place where it sounds like there's a fermata, maybe. Some performances that just hold it a little bit longer than seems appropriate, and I just love it. There's like a certain rhythm that it has I really like. So I can appreciate the work of art. I can appreciate the beauty within the work of art because certain aspects of it are replicating into my mind. And that's the appreciation. And then in this sense that I'm thinking now, which is a much harder standard to reach, is I have to replicate it into my mind, and then I have to understand what other works of art that same thing, that beauty, could fit into. And I have to understand what other types of minds, so what other people or aliens or anything, what other types of minds would also appreciate this work of art. That's a harder standard. Holy shit. This is a newer standard for appreciating work of art. It seems to be quite different from any other form of appreciating works of art that I know of, and it is quite in line with understanding knowledge, goes hand in hand with the epistemology of David Deutsch and the worldview of David Deutsch, the physical view of knowledge, the physical view of how knowledge can be embodied in an actual physical substrate, and what that means, which is that it embodies knowledge of the environment. Okay, well, that's a very quick video. That's all it needs to be. If you got this far into a Zachary Mizell aesthetics video, where we're talking about aesthetics and we're talking about what the fuck are we talking about here?